around the rugby world today in the news that the Prince of Centres, the wonderful Bruce Robertson, one of the best ever to wear the All Black 13 jersey, has sadly passed away. And we will now take a moment to reflect.
Trying to keep the Frenchman rattled. Bruce Robertson. Stu Wilson, that's right. Out to Bruce Robertson. Now he can make something here. Robertson through. In real to Cunningham. To Twinton. Desperate stuff. Big Hayden there. Watts. In real to Taylor. Reed. A magnificent try. A line up here now for New Zealand. Bruce Robertson, they must run a try for Stu Wilson. Murray. Oh, magnificent. Robertson. And that's a lovely tribute. Bruce Robertson gets the last.
Tēnā koutou katoa, good evening and welcome into The Breakdown. Well, it is with deep sadness tonight that we share some stories about the life of an All Blacks legend, All Black number 702, Bruce Robertson. There's been some beautiful tales told in the last 24 hours. Jeff Wilson, Mills Molina, Sir John Kerwin, he was a hero of yours, JK.
Yeah, probably Brucey and, Sir Brian Williams were the guys. Dad used to take me to Eden Park, sit on the sideline when you used to be able to sit like right down there. He probably invented hold the ball in two hands. Just an amazing player. But then, sometimes when you meet your heroes, you just sit and go, wow. And he was just so friendly. He was a beautiful man for rugby. Counties to start with, spent many years being an RDO for Auckland, he coached Auckland. He'd be one of those guys that would carry the bags out. Just a beautiful man. So just feel for his family.
Just easy to talk to, right? You just, pure and simply, you could see him, go and have a yarn, talk about the game, but yeah, and for me, even growing up as well, I'm slightly a little bit younger than you, JK, but he was, before Conrad Smith, he was the guy, right? He was that centre that could do everything in the game of rugby. It was a pleasure to see him play. I had the privilege of being coached by him, so in under-21s, and also the Blues as well, is very, like you say, great man, sort of when he spoke is very soft, he motivated you as well, but just the way we went about it, and you talked about, when you're a youngster growing up, and I was a little bit after you guys, but even the way he swung his hips and things like that, you look back at sort of how that sort of evolved from there, but his skill set and his speed. But a wonderful, wonderful man.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those beautiful stories. Our heart, our love goes out to the family, friends, teammates and all the rugby fraternity that are hurting right now. Tonight is going to be a massive show. These guys have been put on notice because the CEO of New Zealand Rugby, Mark Robinson, is joining us a little bit later on. Plus, we've got the All Blacks forwards coach, Jason Ryan. But first, let's talk Super Rugby with Nurofen, available at Chemist Warehouse.
We're in a temporary stadium for over 12 years and we can still pack it out. A game like the Blues, there's nothing like it.
Crusaders home game, you get everyone in Canterbury into one place at the one time celebrating the same team. We're all Reds diehards. Let's go Crusaders! Great to see the stadium full of people. There's no spare seats. We need a bigger one. We're getting one soon. Anytime we have a home game, look at us. We just go for it. The Crusaders are all in one. Go to Crusaders! Go with the Crusaders!
Well, Razor, he's a character, that's for sure. He just seems to know how to make the boys tick, and he really relates to, obviously, the Christchurch Canterbury crowd.
The heart of this country is rugby, and the Crusaders are #1 for years, mate.
Just passion, bro. The history, it's rich, filled with it. Everyone's in here, everyone's here for a good time. The pride in this team's unbelievable. I mean, look at the amount of injuries I've had this year, and they're still up there, still competing, and they'll go on and win it all. Awesome to see our people out, turn up in numbers against a big rival, and a lot of history between the two teams. But just want to thank all our supporters that turned up in numbers today. It's a cold night here in Christchurch, but definitely gave us an edge, and hope everyone had a good night and stay safe. Cheers.
Oh, very cute, very cool. That was intense. There was a sellout crowd, a cold autumn night that felt like winter.
At least laughing.
What more could you want, JK, except maybe a Blues win?
Kirst, can you tell him off for laughing? Why is he laughing?
How cold were you down there?
I was cold.
You were freezing, right? And you're frosty afterwards as well, I'm sure, because you didn't get the result you were looking for.
Look, it was one of the most intense games I've seen defensively. As a Blues tragic, you know, I think that you come away from it and the defence was amazing. I was disappointed it went to a red card because I thought it should have been a yellow, but Richie was actually really low, and so I was really surprised about that. And the second thing, there was a knock-on. There was a knock-on, and we went back for that, and we didn't go back for the knock-on. So what's going on? Have a look at this. Knock-on, 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 knock-on.
How did that get missed?
Oh, no. So if you have a look at Richie here, if you had a look at that, he was crouching. Like, should have been a yellow, but I didn't think it should have been upgraded because if he stays at his height, Dalton hits him clean. So there was tough calls.
I still don't understand how they missed that, and they gave the try. I don't understand how they've missed the clear knock.
I think it was 2.5 rucks.
Yeah.
And I think it's a challenge, Mills.
Unless it's something where they've got to come back to its foul play, right? So, I mean, look at that. That's clear and obvious.
It's a clear knock-on. Look, the thing about these two teams is they know each other so well and they've played against each other so well, and that's the type of contest we were going to get. That was a mistake. They've missed that. And in a game like this where it was always going to come down to one play, they ended up making there was 2 plays, but it came down to one decision they've missed that ultimately for these two teams, that was always going to be the difference. Once it got out to that, I felt the game was over because you could see that there was a stalemate, right? It was that type of contest. Neither team really attacked very well, of which I'm concerned, given most of those guys are playing at the next level. And our attack was not good.
Watching at home, you're right. The intensity was there. You were thinking mess is going to be massive. The defence at the start from the Blues. I was a little bit disappointed at the end because, like, I thought it might have opened up the skill set of some of our players that were out there, but it just didn't. It just became a slugfest. And I understand it's one of those games, but I honestly thought it would have opened up a little bit more.
Well, I think, look, don't get me wrong, I thought the Crusaders actually deserved to win. You've got to give them credit. I thought for the first 30, if you're a coach, you want to start like that. Like, Kirst, we're in the stand, right? And there was like the first 20 minutes, it was 79 tackles to 3. Right, and they missed a couple of tries early. But late in the game, the ball bounces into Will Jordan's hand. That bounces to a bit of Bowden genius. Then then we're looking at 15-10 with a great finish. So did it live up to an epic, Mills? You're probably right, no. But the intensity of it. So yeah, you have a look. This is a brilliant moment that only sort of Bodie can do. But if you have a look at the bounce of the ball here at home, I don't know what happened, but the ball goes. Oh, watch this. Oh, where is Will Jordan? Oh, that was me in the stand yelling. But that makes it 15-10. But it was just one of those games where it was just so intense and everyone was, I mean, Scott Barrett was epic. You didn't see him all night. He was just, working and working and working. So I think the Blues will go away disappointed, but still a lot of footy. Now? Well, I think they just make it null and void because they made a mistake because I think it was yellow. That's your Blues hat on though, right? Of course. Are we going to see him for the next few weeks? Well, they start at 6 weeks. They start at 6 weeks, but I think when you look at that, the mitigating factors are... Shoulder on head. Has he gone, shoulder on head. Yeah, so that's a yellow card, right? It's direct contact with force. It's direct contact with force. And if you look at, don't get me wrong, Dalton's gone down, but he hasn't gone down very far. And if you want to draw your drawings again, he's not certainly down where your pack and save man's like this, right? Where he's sitting like that. He's still like that, right? He's still like that. His responsibility. He's going to get some time off. Yeah, I think you've probably got your hazy sort of Blues eyes on, JK. Because, no, look at that, Mills. Look how basically, not his fault. Look how low he is. Yeah, I know, and I think there's been other. Yeah, no, it's out of control. I think there's been other examples where they've actually they've been lower and they've asked him to actually. It's up to the player to go down and be even lower than what Richie has. So if it's starting at 6 and it's contact to the head. Yeah, look, and I'm okay with that. We've got to start. With the head, we've got to start doing that. I just didn't think it'd be upgraded last night for those couple of mitigating factors. It has been, and if he gets a couple of weeks, well, we've got to look after the health of our players. It's just as a Blues man, I thought it was and you take your hat off to the Blues. They survived that with their defence, but yeah.
But also the ruling, you know. I mean, I was sitting at home and they were like, "Well, you can bring another player on." That's great. It's a great rule because it hasn't ruined a game. And you imagine if that happened in the first minute of the game, and they weren't allowed to bring someone else. So you know, that's another example also of that 20-minute rule.
Well, it's time now for our Gillette head-to-head. Tonight we're talking about two powerhouse wingers. Yes, Caleb Clarke and Lester Whainganuku. I mean, we talked about it. It was billed to be one of these heavyweight matchups for the ages. Did it live up to the hype, though? On one side of the coin, JK, but not on the other.
This guy was outstanding. Like, his work rate is unbelievable. He gets in, he looks for work. At one stage late in the game, he comes, whereas, look, he's on the other side of the field. He's getting in around the ruck. I think from a work rate point of view, like, we need to try and retain this guy. He's only 23. And I need to say, Lester, look, if you stay in New Zealand, mate, by the time you get to 29, you'll be there 5 times the amount you're going to get in France. So stay. I just loved his work rate. I thought Caleb, things didn't go his way last night. I thought he made a couple of defensive errors and he put a kick in that went out on the full. So from a head-to-head point of view, I think, you know, they're both great players, but I think Lester probably would have got the head-to-head for me.
Can the All Blacks take two power wingers to the World Cup?
Well, there's plenty of power wingers out there at the moment. I mean, the competition...
Will they take both of these two?
Oh, they could, but I struggle to take both of them right now. I don't think there's room for both of them. Versatility, Lester can play in the midfield and can play centre. He's been doing it every week, Lester.
Yeah.
Every single week, every game he's played, these are the types of performances you're getting. You've got glimpses of this from Caleb in most games. He's doing 2 or 3 or 4 things really well, but to your point, he's probably not quite getting involved enough. But let's remember, his team's not playing that well right now at the moment. They're not really creating a lot of opportunities for him, Mills, to do exactly what he can do. And he's not finding space on the outside. So for me, I find it hard to compare given the performances of the teams.
I think you're right. Because your team's not going so well, one guy is trying a lot harder than what he should. The other guy, in Lester, is actually understands his role and what he needs to do when things are not quite happening. So he goes around the edges, he helps the forwards out, he busts through, then he gets an opportunity and he finishes things off. But he also roams around. You're looking at Caleb, he's creating opportunities too, but because he's trying so hard, he's probably making mistakes again and choosing the wrong decisions after that because he's trying so hard. But I think the way Leicester's been going, when you look at big games, you know, he's been playing well week in, week out, and you get to big games and he's lifted again. That's what you see sort of, you know, All Blacks that they should be able to do.
Yeah, look, I mean, we're walking through airports, we're sitting in airports and people are saying to us, you know, who they're going to pick. But what you need to realise is, my old mate Foxy always says to me, who do you leave out? Yeah. And I think that outside back thing, if you're going to think about Bowden possibly playing fullback and Will going to the wing, you know, who is going to miss out? And it's a tough one, you know. Who do you leave out of the current All Blacks? I thought Talia was good, bit quiet, like you said, Goldie, bit quiet last night because they didn't get the ball that they'd wanted. But I think if you want to put your hand up, you've got to go looking for extra work.
How many guys are they going to pick that haven't played for the All Blacks? You know, or haven't played significant number of test matches for the All Blacks, and you have full confidence in their abilities. So how many do you think they're going to pick in that first squad for the Rugby Championship?
36. So Ian Foster said last week that I'd take 36.
So there is room
for a couple
of people, 1 or 2 extras in the environment.
In the backs, though, Goldie, seriously, in the backs? Or are you going to take... Well, look at the attrition rate with our loose forwards. Like, are you going to take a couple of extra backs or are you going to take a couple of extra forwards? I reckon they'll take forwards.
They've got plenty of them. They've got way too many.
Just before we move on, and we'll stick with the backs, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, not in the 23 last night. Should he have been, JK? Would he have made an impact? And what do you do with him now?
Probably yes and yes. I think he might have made an impact coming off the bench, although Bryce Heem was, like, epic when he came on.
This was a defensive game. This was a defensive game.
Yeah.
Bryce Heem was a better defender.
Yeah, and he came on and really got advantage line. Look, I lived through this with Benji Marshall. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had to have as a coach. It just wasn't working with the Blues and me and Benji, and we sat down and had a really... It was a horrible conversation, but he said, JK, I'm not going to drop down to the second side. I want to go back to rugby league. I said, go. And it was done in a week, and he went back. And I think if Roger feels that he's not going to make the All Blacks or... you know, he's not getting the opportunities and he goes back to the Warriors next week, I think it's a win-win for everyone. It's not failure, it's just like,
Didn't work.
Why?
It didn't work.
Didn't work. I mean, he's still an All Black, and you know he can take that, and he's had a lot of bad luck. But if he was playing for the Warriors in the next couple of weeks, it's just a win-win, and I'm sure the Warriors wouldn't worry about rules. Are you allowed to do that, Millsy?
Anything can happen if your name is Roger Tuivasa. We should ask the CEO when he comes on. He would release them. But I think, given where the Blues are in the form that they're in, it's probably forced Leon McDonald's hand in terms of the big game. You know, he goes to sort of the guys that have got a bigger skill set. Harry Plummer, he can kick. It's going to be defensive, whilst Roger's attacking game is massive. He probably thought it was going to come down to, you know, one little aspect, and that's probably why he's missed out. But it's sad, isn't it, in some ways, because, man, he's such a great player.
It's life. It's life. He's tried to take the opportunity. Things haven't panned out like you've talked about. I mean, in the end, if he goes back to the Warriors, I'll wish him luck. If he gets an opportunity, I hope he plays well, whether it be just for the Blues to finish off the season.
Well, it's time now for our Form 15 of Super Rugby Pacific Round 12. Now, this week was selected by a former Highlander. So no surprises if he tries to fit a few of them in, even though they've just gone down to the Brumbies, Jeff. Joey Wheeler, his Form 15 this week. Ethan de Groot. I don't even think Ethan played. Bradley Slater from the Chiefs, who was very good in Taranaki, and Tamaiti Williams from the Crusaders. In the second row, Scott Barrett and Tupou Vai. Sammy Penny, Finau, Duplessis, Karifi and Ari Savia, the man who scored a hat-trick in the second half against Moana Pacifica. Finlay Christie running amok in Christchurch. Damien McKenzie in the mix as well. At 12 and 13, David Havili, Braden Ennor, the 1-2 punch from the Crusaders, and the back three, Lester Whainga-Nuku, Kini Naholo and Harry Godfrey. This is Joey Wheeler's explanation.
Kia ora, Breakdown team. My pleasure to announce Round 12's Form 15 side, all based off this round's performances. Obviously in the one jersey though, Ethan de Groot didn't play. He was on All Black rest, but he put in a stellar performance down on the pond down in Gore, where he shot an MVP performance of 74 ducks, so he had to make the cut. Also, the other position I struggled with was actually in the 15 jersey. I thought Sean Stevenson would just keep rolling on, but he had a quiet performance for his standards, and Will Jordan didn't really nail it either. I thought Zane Sullivan was good in patches, but I'm going with the young fella, Harry Godfrey, in the 15 jersey. One special mention, though, that did come into consideration was actually Jeff Wilson for the 15 jersey, due to his performance at the karaoke bar last night in Wellington. Absolutely outstanding from you, Golden One. All right, I look forward to the debate, team. I'm sure there'll be plenty of it, especially from you, Sir John Kerwin, because not many of your Blues boys made the cut. Good on you, mates.
Oh, I knew there was a few husky voices around here.
What's your go-to? What's your karaoke go-to? Do you have one?
Oh, you throw a little bit of Elton John now, but let's be honest, it was a great night. The entertainment committee, which is Joey Wheeler. I'm not belting anything out, I can tell you that for a fact. Look, it was good fun. It was great, actually. We came together, we watched the game, we went and had a meal, watched the game and chatted about it. And then as he was changing his Form 15 at the table, we're going left and right, left and right. We got through about the 5th or 6th song. I think that's when Ethan de Groot was well and truly going to be starting at loose head prop.
I want to see some proof, because I make a really good duck ragout. So if Ethan's got that many ducks, he should be sending us some proof.
There's some big selections in this team, isn't there? David Havili, for one, has put his hand up, Jeff, and said, don't forget about me for that number 12 jersey.
Some little plays in games can change a game, and that one-handed dummy that
sold everyone.
Sold everyone. I'm jumping up to it, and then he puts the ball through, and it leads to what was the deciding try in the game. I thought he played really well, but that was the best game I've seen from Braden Ennor under pressure in a big moment. I thought he was really, really good, and the two of them together. But once again, the defensive side of the game. Look, the Hurricanes team, but Ennor was good. I mean, I thought there were some things in his game I hadn't seen. His ability to create. He's desperate defensively to do what he needs to do, Mills. For me, you want statement from players. I think he wanted to, don't forget about me. I have been an All Black. I'm good enough to be an All Black again.
And he's had massive injuries, you know, so he's come back from a very long sort of injury spell as well, and he's been progressing nicely. So those are players you turn to in terms of big matches, and they've still got it in them. So, you know, his combination with Havili and the voices I suppose the voices they have around them with Moonga, I mean, those are the guys you sort of turn to in big moments.
I'm just going to totally ignore Joey's team.
You've got one blue in there. He was a good blue, though.
So I'm just not even going to talk about it. He was very good.
He was very good.
But I want to talk about something else. Is it because of combinations? Like I was talking about how hard it is to keep combinations together. So Goodhue's on the bench, right? But these two guys have been playing a lot together, Mills. I mean, from an All Black point of view, do we need to be a little bit selfish this year and try and get combinations going, you know? Because it's very hard, isn't it? You got 12 and 13, which I think are important. You look at Whitelock and Retallick, you know? When they're together, they just know each other's play. I mean, a combination's important going forward to the World Cup, Mills?
Absolutely they are. I think a combination is good, but we've also, that's been a big part of that we've had to try and look to, the centre pairing, you know, who is there and what does it look like because of the injuries that surrounded those positions.
You like Havili at 12 after what you saw last night?
Havili's an All Black all day. He will go. He won't miss out on this, in my view. I just love, he's a big-time player. He's got a nice skill set. He's defensively, he's actually bulked up a little bit as well. That position at 12, he's comfortable there, but he's got another guy at the Hurricanes and Barrett that can, you know, that's just as good too.
Special mention to one of the props, to Mighty Williams, played 73 odd minutes before he limped off. Big shift for him, played both sides of the scrum as well. I know you guys won't mention it, but I just thought I'd throw it out there.
I brought up the scrums last week. I can talk
Well,
props.
there you go.
I can talk props. He was really good. It was a big shift for him once again.
Yeah.
Put his hand up. I think he'll be on the radar.
Got to be in consideration, doesn't
Absolutely.
it? In consideration. That's what all of these players are trying to do this year in a Rugby World Cup year. Time now for our Musashi power play. Musashi available at Chemist Warehouse. This is a guy that has gone from strength to strength for the Chiefs this year when he's had opportunities, whether it's starting or off the bench, Mills.
Oh man, he's been good, isn't he? I mean, he's good physical. He's got nice height on him. Almost reminds you of sort of a Shannon Frizzell sort of mould. Yeah, he used to play fullback back at school. But what I like about it is, you know, the Chiefs have been going so well that you've almost sort of don't really, you target other guys, you know, the superstars in their side, they've got plenty of. But this guy here just goes out there and just puts his body on the line. He doesn't mind a bit of contact, he's elusive, he's powerful, but he's also in some really good form, Jeff.
JK, they're going to have some real serious thinking about the loose foot combinations of players. Jacobson was really good once again. We know Sam Cane and what he's doing at Dalton Papali'i, Peter Gasol-Kula in this environment as well. But they've got to find a way to decide between your Shannon Frizzells, your Hoskins Satutus. You've got to separate them out. That's the challenge for them, is the fact that he's going to have a massive season. Does he have enough, do enough, to overtake players that they've had in an environment? I think it's a real challenge for someone to fight their way into an All Black side.
I don't think you can leave Scott Barrett out of your team. I think he'll play 6 this year. Yep. And I think someone like Finau needs to just be consistent. You know, we've been saying it every year, you know, we're looking for a Jerome Kaino. And the interesting thing is that I think the other guys, like Frizzell and Vaya, those guys who can cover a couple of positions, up until now, it's been consistency. Frizzell's probably sorted that. If this guy can show consistency, then he's got to be putting his hand up, because I think we need to go back to, okay, who are your 2 number 8s? You know, who are your 2 number 7s? Who are your 2 number 6s? Because Jason said it tonight, right? Okay, so Scott Barrett goes down. Who's your next 6? And I think that's what we've got to start doing. And then the 6th loose forward who goes in, you go, okay, so you go, well, the 7s are picked. The 8s are picked, as far as I'm concerned. 6 is the only place there. You put Scott Barrett there, then there's probably only one more position to go. And I reckon just at home, start writing it down.
Also, to show that we're not biased here, Chiefs' winning run came to an end, Mills. They rested or changed 9 players for that game. Reds deserved it, though. Yeah,
they certainly did. But it just goes to show this is a big game for the Chiefs. They'll be sitting there thinking, because it does come down to, you know, mentally, you know, all it takes is one game. And I think for them, they'll go back to the drawing board and they'll want to say to themselves, this is all it takes. You go to championship sort of games, you've got to win them. You've got to be on the game.
I don't think they'll care. I think it's a perfect one to drop. You don't want to be dropping.
Post-match interview.
Yeah, but
they cared. No, I ran into Sam Cane.
I said I don't care. I don't think it matters.
You don't think it matters?
Right? I think it's perfect, right? I think it's perfect because if you're a coach, you need this. Like, look at South Africa in the World Cup last time. They lost to us first up. So the Chiefs were going too well. They got it wrong. They'll all be hurting, and it's perfect for the coach. And the Reds are at the bottom of the table.
Yeah,
you haven't lost. Perfect opposition to lose to. You haven't lost to the Crusaders or the Blues. So I think it's perfect. They'll all be really annoyed, like you said, and you're all saying how upset they were. And they should be, because they shouldn't have lost. But this resting all the players at once, I don't know, it seems to be a trend for the season. You know, you have trends for the season. It's like, but I think they're just thinking about not winning it now. Everyone wants to get in that top 4 and they'll take risks.
Well, still to come on the breakdown, the All Blacks assistant coach Jason Ryan joins us. We've got the boss of New Zealand Rugby, Mark Robinson. But first, Mills in Lycra. I promise you it's for a good cause.
You know, the Westpac helicopter is important. You always sort of see it. I haven't needed it myself or been in a position, thankfully, that we need it, but they do so much. So to fundraise and be able to be part of it and do this, it's a wee bit out of my comfort zone, but it's for a wonderful cause. And yeah, I'm just stoked to be a part of it, man. It's been awesome. Obviously, JK done it over the last few years, and then I was going to actually do it with him. I confirmed and everything else, and then I rang JK to ask him when we were going to start training, and he pulled out, so. I was pumped after that first league, but now I'm like, the reality's set back in. Yeah, it's been a good day for a good cause.
Oh, that is so cool. What an amazing thing you've been a part of, Mills. Well, welcome in the CEO of New Zealand Rugby, Mark Robinson. I promise you'll have your time in a moment. But first, Mills, how are you after that? How are you sitting down, in fact, after 250 Ks on the bike?
Well, I sat down the whole way, 10 hours, so I'm not really keen on sitting down anymore. But I am tired. I've got, my legs are a bit sore, but what a wonderful day. You know, we had it all, joined with a couple of mates, and Jimmy and Richie as well, and for a wonderful cause, you know, the Westpac helicopter, you know, when when you sort of see it fly past, and the funds that they've raised. I know there's a link that's sort of going up, you know, a bit later on, but man, I tell you what, it hurt.
How much doubt? What Millsy, did you do? I'm not going to make it at some stage. That's what happened to me last year.
How much what?
They're like, I'm not going to make it.
Man, it's mentally a grind the whole time. And every time you stop, you think, oh man, we've ticked that off. We'll go again, and then you're telling yourself just to stay on someone's wheel and try and get protected. But I've got to have a big shout out to Owen and Bennett, Performance Bicycle tuning place in Mount Roskill, because they sorted me out with a bike. And when I looked at Jimmy Cowan's bike, honestly, mate, it was way smaller than him. So I don't know how he got up those hills, because he was in good form. Oh,
very good. Well done, Mills. What would it take to recruit you for the next drive, Robbo?
Quite a bit.
You'll meet both,
amazing achievement.
You'll meet both.
Yeah. Well, we need to say a big congratulations. New Zealand Rugby and the Japanese Rugby Union have just signed this new agreement, this Memorandum of Understanding. Tell us what it's about, and have you been watching the breakdown and JK harping on about this Heineken Cup that he would like to see?
Well, good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to be here, obviously. Before we answer that, maybe just want to reflect and acknowledge also, you know, Bruce Robertson's passing in recent days. You guys did a great job covering Bruce's career recently and his life, and certainly from New Zealand Rugby's perspective, our heart goes out to friends and family there. Yes, JK and I have had, both publicly and behind the scenes, had a number of discussions about the opportunities that sit in Japan, and we're delighted to bring that work to conclusion now around the MOU that was talked about last week. I guess there are a lot of things that we see benefits and opportunities for sitting with this agreement. Some relate to, you know, just strategic partnerships in that part of the world. Asia has for a long time been something that we are looking at more and more closely. You know, there are different experiences for our leading players, both men's and women's over time. With the changes of Super, we're looking at different opportunities for different environments. And then there's obviously the commercial side, and we're excited about those opportunities too. So as it relates to the Heineken Cup concept, we've for some time now been talking about the opportunities with the global club competition. We're still working incredibly hard at that with the Northern Hemisphere, and we'd like to think we might have, you know, more news on that in coming months, but it could be something from sort of 2026 onwards we look at.
Traditionally, David Longy, our ex-Prime Minister, once said, you know, we need to stand on our shores and embrace our neighbours, but sometimes as Kiwis we think it's the UK and France, and it certainly is from a rugby point of view. So embracing Asia, what does that look like for you? Beautiful start, I'm so excited about it. What does it look like in 5 years if it was to be successful, Robbo?
Well, the term runs through to 2027 World Cup. We're certainly keen for it to extend beyond that, as we're Japan, but we thought with all the changes potentially in the calendar we're looking at, that was a nice start over the next 5 years. I think beyond it, it's just more and more partnership, in that part of the world, and that relates to having greater presence, connecting to more fans. We see North America and Asia as having a really strong fan base as it relates to our teams in black. So greater connection with fans, greater opportunities with commercial partners sitting in that part of the world. And, you know, who knows where the competition formats or the fixture lists might take us. But at the moment, we've made a pretty solid start around club and country that we're pretty excited about.
Is there an opportunity though, like for you know, you say about a Super Rugby, you know, Pacifica, where we go into where, you know, guys from New Zealand could actually play for a Japanese team if that was an opportunity that sort of arose?
Well, it's always a conversation that, as you know, Millsy, comes up from time to time, and the board certainly last year at one stage had a conversation about. We're really comfortable with the eligibility laws as they sit at the moment, as we said last week. You know, we'll keep a constant watch on what's happening in the global market and what's happening in the domestic scene, and always be open to reviewing that. But at the moment, we think that's a really strong fundamental plank in our game in terms of the strength of our national teams. And we just constantly have to be open to, you know, the flexibility of being open-minded, but at the moment that's where we stand.
The Six Nations is the Six Nations. We know that the Northern Hemisphere focus in and around that for their program. Are we going to have our own Six Nations? Is that what it's going to look like when this global calendar that you're talking about clearly finally comes to fruition? It's been around and been talked about a long time, Robbo, but in regards to this and looking at playing against our neighbours, like you talk about, maybe in Fiji, Japan, Tonga, is that a real possibility now?
Well, certainly that's a large part of what this Nations Championship competition is about. It needs 6 teams out of the Southern Hemisphere to be played every 2 years, hopefully from 2026, and we're making really good progress on that. And so there'd be a process to decide who the 2 teams coming in to join the current SANZAAR partners are. Certainly Japan and Fiji have been talked about a lot, but there could well be other promotion relegation type opportunities that bring others to the fore, as you say. Beyond that, on an annual basis around the Rugby Championship, again, we'll remain open-minded, and like a lot of the things we work on, it takes collaboration and consensus across 4 joint venture partners, so we'll just have to keep working on that. We're very clear that we see, you know, big opportunities with Japan, and obviously with Fiji, we're working really hard to support them as well.
There could be a couple of test matches. Voice de Corridor, Voices in the Corridor. I heard we might be playing them a couple of times.
Well, we're locked in to play one in July next year at home. We've got England here for the first 2 games in the July series, which is fantastic, obviously. 1 game against Fiji, and then we're working on the possibility of going back and reciprocating JK and playing in Fiji, which would be an amazing occasion. But a bit of work to go before we can sort of make any more formal announcements there.
What does that look like, Robbo? The sort of work when and that's massive. If that was to happen over in Fiji when you had a test match over there with the All Blacks travel there, what sort of work are you sort of talking about that needs to get across the line? Is it facilities? Is it, you know, what does it look like?
Yeah, well, there's a calendar. You know, there's one piece is a calendar piece. Regulation 9 obviously has 3 weeks in July, so it'd be, you know, us playing outside of the regulation window, which we're happy to look at. And then there's a whole number of things that our teams are working on as it relates to, you know, player assembly, facilities, tour agreements. And there's a bit of change going in and around the Fiji Rugby Union, as some of you would have seen, around their governance structures at the moment. So we just have to let that settle down a bit, and then we'll commence that work.
Is that investment, like when you talk about a relationship with Japan, that means you'll be investing, you know, some of the income that's coming in to grow that? It's so you have to pay to go to Fiji, you have to invest to go to Japan. Is that how it works? You see it as an investment?
We do. You know, obviously you want to make sure the commercial models are sustainable, and so, you know, ideally we're on the positive side of that whole equation, JK, as we enter into these opportunities. I mean, North America is another region that we've talked about a lot in recent times, and it just feels as we come out of COVID, with travel starting to open up a little bit more, there are more and more possibilities in this space. So North America will be an area that we'll turn our minds to a little bit more as to opportunities there, not only with as it relates to their national teams, but possibly with other national teams of significance around the world, looking to open up that market in that sort of 8-year journey through to the Rugby World Cup in 2031. And the same with the women's space there, with 2033 opportunities to grow there too. You've mentioned this global club competition and the Nations Club competition as well. Can you explain what is the difference between the two? How will they work and who will fund it? Well, one is the club competition's obviously a club competition sitting in that window potentially in June. It has to be determined, a number of teams coming out of the Southern Hemisphere and Northern Hemisphere. They would sit between our part of the world, the teams coming out of Super Rugby Pacific and Japan, competing against the best of what Europe have got to provide and again in a format to be determined over a number of weeks in that schedule there.
That's a lot of layers though, right? This is a lot of layers that are already on top of a Super Rugby competition as well. So when I look at this and is funding this sustainable? All of these layers that we have. You've got NPC. You've clearly got the growth of the women's game, which you've invested in, and you've announced the loss, but that was a strategic investment, right? Can you afford all of these layers?
Well, certainly at the international and at their premier club competition, there's really strong interest from commercial partners and broadcast partners. So that will drive, a great deal of revenue that we will not only pay for the competition, but over time, as we all know, reinvest back into the game at different levels. We've still got more work to do around our, the financial framework that operates across the entire game in New Zealand. But we feel, relative to other parts of the world, we're in a pretty good space at the moment. I won't go into all the accounting treatments around the loss that was reported recently, but they were, as you say, a really considered, focused a range of investments that we made at that time to set the game up as we came through COVID, and it dealt with a lot of issues we were dealing with in COVID as well. So yes, there is more value in some of these international opportunities that can fund the game and the competitions we're in.
That brings me to another point. So, when the Silver Lake deal was going on, a lot of us older guys said, OK, what about the community? And we spoke about a lot of this money going into the community, and I know... So how does that actually work? How are we going to, I think, beautiful, all the stuff around the international game, but how does the community distribution of money work?
So with our provincial unions, we have a revenue share model of 17.5% of our revenue goes towards our provincial unions. So at the present time, that sits within a range of about $40 million a year going to our provinces. And we have a range of different investment opportunities and I guess strategic areas of focus that we work with them to invest in the game. And top of mind in that space at the moment is around teenagers. We're concerned about the drop-off of teenagers in the game, women and girls space, coach development, there's a whole range of different things which we look to invest in there. And obviously the provinces, as it relates to the NPC unions, run their NPC teams as well. So what our challenge is balancing, to Goldie's point, all the different priorities that our provincial unions have and working with them to create a sustainable model. We hope that we can invest more and more into the community game and then make sure that whole model is fit for purpose going forward. How do we control that the provincial unions just don't spend more on their top side to come eighth? Well, we have funding agreements with them where we've got to strike a balance between having a good degree of focus and alignment around what's important to invest in, but also give them as partners the freedom to be able to invest in areas that they see fit. And each of the 26 unions is a different entity, isn't it, with different opportunities and challenges they work with. But certainly that trend across the game is one we're mindful of around investing in that space at a provincial level more and more, to your point, where there is a potential risk for not as investing as much as we'd like to see in the community game.
So certainly, it sounds like it's amazing. You've been all over the world, mate. You've gone to France, we're back in Fiji, you're in Japan, everything else. In terms of talking about, that's good. Not all exactly, it does. But you're obviously working really hard. But where is the state of the game at in New Zealand? I mean, there's often talk about there's bums on seats, viewership. So obviously pretty good. Wayne Smith coming out and saying it needs to be a faster game. Where are we at? Is there still interest in this game? Is there still players coming through, both women's and men's, that once these other players move on, that have we got the growth of the game coming through?
Oh look, we're really excited. We think the start to the year's been incredibly positive. We're seeing incredible interest as it relates to broadcast viewership with Super Rugby Pacific, back at above pre-COVID levels. So really significant broadcast interest across the competition. Our registrations in the community game, again, are nudging up towards pre-COVID levels. In fact, year on year against 2019, they're up in teenage levels of the game, up in women and girls, and significantly up in heartland levels as well. So we look at Ngāti Pro East Coast at the moment, 6 women's clubs teams, I believe, and 8 men's club teams across a population of just under 4,000 people. So incredible signs of opportunity that in our community space, that some of the things we're working on, combined with probably the inspiration of a World Cup last year, has meant that we're we're travelling quite well in some of those areas, but always more and more work to do. You know, we know that the sustainability question is one, the constant growth of the community game and reinvesting back there is important. And then the shape of the game that Smithy, you know, raised a couple of weeks or recently. I mean, I was with him a week or two before he did that podcast, and there's no surprises from me because he was very passionate about what he thought had to happen in that space. And to be honest, that's great for the game. You know, some people having different views about the game, the state of it, where it's going, and you know, legendary people like him having a view is great. It creates interest. We've made a positive start, we think, around the tempo of the game in terms of what's happening in Super Rugby. But as Smithy said, there's more work to do there, more opportunity to make it better. And some of those ideas we're really strongly advocating through to World Rugby where, as I said before, we need consensus, and in the space of global law reform, we need real consensus across, you know, over 100 members that are sitting on World Rugby now. So that's sort of no small task when you look at the shape of the game.
So just checking, you haven't switched off his game of Super Rugby this year to watch the Lions and the Serengeti?
No, I haven't. Smithy's got a lot more time on his hands at the moment, so he probably has got his eye on the Sky controller more than I have.
Just quickly, mate, there's been Super Rugby sides are coming out and saying we'd like to be standalone. I sort of quite like the idea because I think it might help retain some of our players who get private ownership. Where do you sit on them, sort of sitting out on with themselves or by themselves, or a whole tournament that's separate?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've made some really good progress in recent years about the way that we focus on that competition. And being standalone or more autonomous, JK, could mean a lot of different things, I guess. Where we've worked with our clubs is to have to give them more certainty around the licences they have, so perpetual licences. We've tried to free up some of the commercial rights that sit within them for them to be able to grow where possible revenue. But one of the key things we see as a future opportunity is something that has more focus around the governance and management of that competition in a more dedicated way. So a slightly more independent commission, board and management that can help drive and have real focus 365 days of the year on that competition, which historically it hasn't had over the last 25 odd years. So we're working really closely with them there. We know there's frustration around the speed at which that can happen, but again, that comes back to a partnership we're in there with our friends from Rugby Australia, and we just have to keep working with them on that model.
We've run out of time, but just a quick yes or no question that Mills raised. If Roger Tuivasa-Sheck wanted to go back to the Warriors, would you release him?
Well, I haven't heard anything about it. I've been away. I mean, that's something that our team, I'm sure, will be open to a conversation. I haven't heard that till happening.
There isn't 100 members on there. So we'll go quickly, I'm sure.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
We're going to have to make it a monthly thing because clearly there's so many questions.
Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff going on, and I guess this is a great opportunity for Share that. There's lots of things happening in this next, window, especially from 26 onwards. It's hugely exciting for the game, and there's lots of cool stuff happening domestically. So great to be able to share, and thanks for the time.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing that, Mark Robinson. We really appreciate it. Still more to come after this, including Jason Ryan. No, my hooky, my welcome back into the breakdown. Well, we absolutely love this man on the show. And once again, the All Blacks forwards coach joins us on the program. Jason Ryan, we welcome you into the breakdown. Thank you for joining us. The guys have had their say on the derby last night. For you, as an All Blacks coach, what are you looking for when two New Zealand sides go head to head? What do you take out of that game?
Yeah, evening guys, great to be on. Look, I thought it was definitely a very physical contest, especially early on. The game sort of opened up a little bit towards the end, but I guess for us, to answer your question, what we look for, we've all got jobs each for each game, and I'm big on looking at the forwards, how quickly they're getting off the ground at different stages during the game, and then we might have a wee project at half-time where we say, righto, what are your messages, boys, in each area? So we're there and we're working and having a good look at different momentum shifts, but definitely enjoyed the spectacle.
Jay, I've got to ask you, there's been a number of guys already this season who have pulled up lame. You lost Fletcher Newell early. Nepo Lalala has gone down as well. Any concerns? You're only 5 weeks away from announcing the first squad for 2023. Any concerns, particularly up front?
Yeah, look, I think, the injuries, it started definitely with a hell of a bang, didn't it, in the early stages, but there is some boys starting to come back. I think, with Neeps, we're pretty hopeful that we'll see him in the final series. Obviously, which will set him up to be available for selection of the Rugby Championship. Fletcher Newell, he's not going to be available for the Rugby Championship, but he's still a chance long-term down the track. So for those two guys, we're pretty hopeful. But, yeah, we don't want any more, Goldie.
Jace, I know you've been overseas just testing out that French wine, so I hope you've found a good one for the World Cup. But on a serious note, from a forward pack point of view, you've been over there to study Ireland again and France. I mean, what are you seeing with your eyes?
Yeah, look, I think they're really running their games well. I think they in the north they know how to handle game understanding and game management in big moments, and you can sort of feel the crowd, how the momentum can change so quickly. So that was a big one for me of what I was looking at, sort of game-wise, JK. But technically, I just had a little bit of a project around just line-out formations and how teams are defending differently, and sort of the ability to change late. So making sure that any pre-call stuff and that sort of thing we're on top of. But definitely the rugby, there were some nice tries scored in the Six Nations, and really enjoyed it as a spectacle, to be fair.
Jace, I want to ask on a personal level, because this is different for you. Usually you're in amongst it right now with with Super Rugby and things like that. Are you itching to get out there and sort of get amongst the boys and sort of and try a few things? How's it been for yourself personally?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. It was something that I was a little bit concerned about myself, to be honest, Mills, being straight into campaigns pre-season and then right through to sort of June. But look, I've been there's been plenty of work on, mate. I've been around all the super clubs, which has been really enjoyable. And I talk to most of the forwards coaches every week, every couple of weeks, and anything that I can help with, I review every single game as if it was a test match for our forward pack, and have my clips ready as if I was going to present. So I've got to stay sharp on that side of things. But I've also been out coaching around the traps with some clubs and a few schools and that sort of thing. So you got to stay sharp. You can't get comfy and rely that you can just roll in and be ready, because I've got to be sharp at the right time.
Speaking of being comfortable, Ian Foster was on the show a few weeks ago and he mentioned he expected a lift from some of the players in New Zealand in terms of their form and the way they are playing. Have you seen that shift as a group?
Yeah, I think we in the next couple of weeks we'll be able to answer that, Goldie, as the climb in the next 2 or 3 rounds for those final spots. We'll see an increase in intensity in the games, and that's when you sort of it's nothing like a test match. As you know, I think sometimes it can be a little bit of a loose word that I was up there with a test match, but it really is it's not, because it's not 2 countries going head to head. But what I do like is I think Super Rugby as a spectacle, I think it's right on song. We've had 2 sellout crowds, I think it is, in round robin games in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and I think that this is the time of year, and in those finals where we're really starting to have a look at players. On Saturday when we met in Christchurch, we had our first crack at the team, and we all had a good hearty discussion, which was really enjoyable. But it was good to have some debate, that's for sure.
Jace, besides getting rid of the backs, which most forwards would like to do, where would you like to see the game go from an innovation point of view to keep the speed, the speed and the game time up?
Yeah, it's a great question, JK. Look, I honestly think that it's something that's always evolving. I know there's been a little bit of bad press and that lately around it, but look, I think the communication with the referees has never been better. I think with every super club having a referee in their camp every week is helping the game, and it's helping the running of the game for the better. And especially around scrum resets, like they're actually down. They're in a great spot. We've seen some good trends there, so that helps the game. I think, around the mauling side of it, I've sort of said this before a couple of times, but if you've got a 6-man line out, just keep 6 men in there, and instead of piling another 5 in. Look, we've all done it because the law allows it, but I think that would tidy it up quite nicely. But I think overall, there is some good trends actually happening, JK. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not, but I think we're on track with conversations that are going on.
Jay, so I want to ask about the rolling maul, because I know you hate a rolling maul, mate. but the innovation around that, have you seen much, you know, whilst you've been over in France, sort of looking at the other teams?
Oh, look, I think teams are getting better defensively, definitely. I think that, you know, teams are defending in the air really well, air pressure, and then they've got the ground pressure where they stay down. It's a good, there's good parts of that teams are being able to have their main system but really change really late, which I'm liking. But I think that, yeah, there's definitely some good little variations. You mentioned France. I think definitely around what they're doing, there's some good little things that we're going to have to be on top of, Mills, to make sure we can nullify that.
In your opinion, Jace, what's it going to take to win the World Cup?
It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a lot of trust in what we're doing. I think that we need to get on the plane with everyone that's trusted to do a job, to get around the coaching team, to make sure the players trust each other and make sure that our game is always evolving. I think that to win World Cups, the team that evolves the most during the tournament will usually go on and hold the trophy from what I've seen. Obviously, injury-free would be nice, but we know that tradition tells us there will be dings. So we've got to have the next man in ready to go and just do the simple things really well over and over again and then keep getting better at them.
Jace, you're such an asset to New Zealand rugby. Thank you so much for coming on The Breakdown. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to join you. I'll just get back to getting more Mother's Day cooking already, you know, like it's 3-course meal I got ready. No,
good man.
Happy Mother's Day to all the mums. See you guys.
Oh, beautiful way to finish, and I hope you three will be cooking dinner for your loved ones at home as well. A couple of things to pick up on off the back of that. First one was that trust, JK, to win a World Cup. Trust in the playing group, trust in the process, trust in this coaching team. That extends to the whole of New Zealand, right? Yeah,
like I trust them. I think we've got a real big chance. We're going in as underdog, which I really like. We've got to trust this coaching staff now. It's been a rocky time. That's in the past. They can concentrate on this. I love the form. Sam Cane, Dalton Papali'i. You know, we've got positions covered, and I'm feeling really buoyant. I mean, it was great listening to Robbo as well. It just feels really, really nice, Mills.
Oh, I'm confident. You know, I mean, I'm confident. I've always been. We've got the players. You know, individually we've got the players. But after hearing him say, evolve, you know, trust in what they're doing. So. Innovation, you know, around it. So it's, you know, how are we going to get the best players in the world in this team to really fire during the World Cup?
And I'll just quickly say, but it also means that you're going to have to be a standout performer over the next month if you're going to fight your way into this All Black side, because he just said it, this is not Test match rugby every weekend. So they'll trust the guys that have been there and done the job before. And no decline in the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's what he said as well. Really interesting conversation, really interesting show tonight. Happy Mother's Day to all the beautiful mums out there, to all of our mums, to my mum as well. We hope that you've all had an amazing day. Great job, as always. And we will be back on The Breakdown, same time, same place next Sunday to do it all again. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.